Yeah, I learned the game from William Wesley, you can never check me. Back to back for the niggas that didn't get the message. Back to back like I'm on the cover of Lethal Weapon. Back to back like I'm Jordan 96, 97. Whoa.
Hey guys, so I'm going to be doing a maintenance video for you on my Luxe OLED, just like I promised. What we're going to go through is the basic maintenance of the Luxe. Basically everything that you as a user are supposed to go through and clean and lube and maintain. This will work for basically all the Luxes except for the Luxe Ice, because that's maybe got some different technology in it. But the 1.0s, 1.5s, 2.0s, and OLEDs, all basically the exact same thing. There might be very tiny differences, obviously, besides the OLED part, the OLED screen. But like the eye covers are different or whatever, but I'm pretty sure like the reg is different, the engines are all going to be very similar. It's all basically the exact same thing. So everything that we go through here today will help you with all of your Luxes. So the first thing that I like to do is, I got this at the dollar store, just a little spray bottle and a microfiber or kitchen cloth. Make sure that these are clean, make sure that they're not already full of grease and paint and dirt especially. And what I like to do, maybe put a couple sprays on your microfiber and just kind of clean the outside of the gun. What you want to do is get the paint, obviously some of the dirt out, but if there's some dirt already on the gun, or if there's dirt on the microfiber, you're going to risk obviously scratching the paint and things like that. So my gun's already pretty clean. Everything that I have here, all my equipment, everything's pretty clean, so I don't have to worry too much about that. But you want this to be clean, just so you know you're not going to be touching your gun and then touching a part that you previously cleaned, or touching all your tools and getting your stuff dirty. So all of that heavy, gross slime stuff on the exterior of your guns, you just want to quickly wipe that kind of stuff off, okay? So I guess what we're going to go through first is the barrel, just because we can get that out of the way. So my barrel's already pretty clean. So I want to clean your insert. I just got my microfiber squeegee and just go through it. So that's pretty good. Go through the tip. If you need to, you can just go with the squirt bottle. Clean your threads well. What I normally do is kind of run this under the tap, just if I wanted to clean out my portings, if there's any dirt or paint or anything in my portings, I'm able to clean it out. If not, a couple things are bothering you, just take your little dental pick and pick it out, whatever, but that would take forever, so just run it under the sink, you'll be fine. My barrel's nice and clean now, we got that out of the way. What I like to do is actually grease that little O-ring and a bit of the threads here, just so it screws in a lot smoother, less squeaky, especially when you get a brand new Luxe. You'll know when you're putting this together it tends to squeak. Just a tiny bit of grease on that would be good. The grease that I'm going to use is the monkey poo. This is good for any spoolie gun. I like how in Canada, sometimes it's really hot, sometimes it's really cold. The weather's all weather and climate's all over the place. So this grease isn't too thick, but it's not too thin either. So it's gonna stay on your gun. It's really good for the bolts of the Luxe, all the O-rings and the engine. None of the O-rings are gonna swell up, and this stuff's not gonna rub off very easily either. So you're safe with this stuff, and plus it smells like bananas. If you don't, because I had to order this, so if you're not interested in maybe ordering your grease, you always have your hater sauce. This is very cheap, you can find this almost anywhere. It's not the best quality, but it's good enough. Or if you maybe have your grease that came with the marker, you can use that too. I have not touched this yet, this is still brand new. So I'm not going to use this. I'm going to finish up using my monkey poo first. So that's what I got, okay? So I've got a little dab. I'm just going to put it very small layer on the O-rings and the threads. That screws in there pretty well now. no squeaking. Good, so set that out of the way. Next, I guess what we're going to do is take apart the core. Comes out of there nicely. Unscrew the can. Pop the bolt. If this is too tight to unloosen by hand, you can just get, like, I got my dental pick, the thick part, or you can get an Allen key or something, and just a very tiny crank, and it should snap out of place. Unscrew by hand, and when you re-screw things in, or when you tighten, do not over tighten. Don't completely, torque it to the max, because again, you're putting your threads at risk, and things like that. You're gonna damage your threads and everything a lot easier. So just hand tight everything, or a very light torque if you need to. So we got all that apart. Now what you just want to do is get your microfiber and just wipe down where all the grease is, O-rings, threads. Make sure you clean inside of the back cap there. Good. Now my swab is clean, but if there's any dirt or anything on here, I highly recommend you don't do this. But what I like to do is maybe just stick my swab and very carefully run it through. Get a lot of the dirt and grease on the inside, O-rings out of the can. But again, if you have any dirt or something on your squeegee, I highly recommend you don't do that, because you might wear out the O-rings on the inside. Don't want to do that for obvious reasons. Okay, so now to grease it, to put it back together, we're going to get a little bit of grease. We're going to start at the back cap, and we're just going to plop it on there and roll it. Grease on the threads. Okay, now don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but there is a little O-ring, yeah, maybe you do, right inside the back of that. It's something that a lot of people miss, so you want to just get, again, tip of your finger with a little bit of grease and just go over that, not a big deal. And when you go to your rod, I got 4 O-rings on my rod, so I'm going to get a good amount of grease and just rub my finger around that. Good. I'm going to put a little bit of extra just on the back, because I want to try to get that O-ring just around the edge here on the inside and just kind of roll it in, and you can just screw it back on. Hand tight is good enough, you don't need to torque it down. I'm going to go to our bolt. 2 O-rings on the bolt. Actually a third one at the very tip. I guess that's for breech wear. Any excess grease you got on your hands, you can just run that across the bolt. And if you want to put a little bit of extra on the tip, you can do that. And with that, rub it on the inside O-rings of your can. Makes it a little bit easier to get in there if you don't have skinny fingers. Okay, so that's good. If you want to get your grease on the inside there, there's a little gap in the can, which is nice, because if your fingers are skinny enough, you can just rub your grease on the inside O-rings there, just like that. Then we'll do the outside. Outside doesn't need a heavy coat, just kind of rub your greasy fingers across them. That's it. We're going to put our bolt back in, cross the rod, and screw your can back on. Good, so that's hand tight. Now, what you want to do to check and make sure your seals are good, make sure your engine is working the way it should, put the tip of the bolt to the palm of your hand and just kind of let the spring, push the spring in, and it should be sucking to your hand like a kind of like a suction cup, if you can hear it. Right? If it does not suction like that, there's probably an air leak or something somewhere. Something's not sealed properly. Something's wrong with your core. It should be a lot of suction there. Okay. So we're actually just going to put that aside, but we're not going to put it in just yet. In your breech, if you want to quickly swab in your breech as well. Again, make sure it's clean, it's not dirty. And there you go. All your grease and dirt inside of there are clean. We are going to, let's just do the ASA knob very quickly. This is something that a lot of people miss. You have a tiny O-ring. You can see it just at the tip of that. So for some reason, something a lot of people miss, and people have very small leaks coming from their ASA, and they don't know what it could be. This is most likely it. It's a fairly thick O-ring, but it's small. So keep an eye on that once in a while. Grease the threads. If you do this just once in a while, you don't even have to do this very often. It's going to make it a lot easier to screw and unscrew this knob when your gun's gassed up. Okay, so screw it all the way in and then back it off. And that's all you need for that. Let's go to the eye covers. So for the eye covers, well, I got the 2.0 OLED, so obviously you're going to push the lever in, and then you're going to push the front of the cap, use your nail to peel it off just like that. Now the difference with this, I think, now don't quote me on this, but the OLEDs come with like a metal spring or something for the latch here, something that's springy for the latch, right? Now I think for the 2.0s, this used to be some kind of rubber, or it used to be like an O-ring. I'm not too sure, but I like how this one is metal because it won't break on you, you won't lose it. What happened to me on my 2.0 is I think I lost that on my eye cover, and I ended up diving into a bunker and I lost my my eye cover. Okay, so I'm happy that this is now a metal, it's more durable. This definitely isn't easy to lose, that's for sure, and probably very difficult to break. Okay, so getting off topic, but we're just going to clean the inside of that. Mine is already pretty clean, but if you have maybe have a Q-tip or something, a clean Q-tip, you can just rub it on the inside of that. Make sure you have your detent there. You have a spring there. Spring is glued on nicely. Just make sure you don't lose that. Make sure that's always glued on. Right, and then of course you have that other little spring there for the latch, for the little switch. Okay, and then the actual eyes itself, again, make sure the magnets and everything around on the exterior is nice and clean. Oh, got my little dental pick. I'm gonna just carefully take out the eye wire. Again, Q-tip or something small, lightly clean that out. The breech where it sits, you might want to clean that out as well. Mine seems pretty clean, so I don't have to worry. This should sit right back in that spot, but again, can't be too careful, right? It should just click right back in there. Perfect. To put the eye cover back on, you want to put it in forward first, and then clicks back closed. I'm going to quickly do the other side. Okay, now everything's in order. Everything's in working condition. So from here, we're now going to move on to our reg. I believe this is a size 9, if I'm correct. This extremely thickest Allen key I could possibly find. I think I'm right. This might be a size 9, might be a size 10. I think it's a size 10. But either way, you're going to find the thickest Allen key here, and you're just going to take off this little cap, or this nut, just at the bottom of it, of your reg. Okay. So cap would come off. You're going to have your bumper O-ring. Do not lose this, because if you lose this, you're not going to be able to screw it on and have this snug again. This might be very loose if you put it on without the bumper O-ring, so keep those aside. And then you have your grip itself. Make sure this inside of this is clean. I'm just going to get my clean swab and run it in there. This is clean. Then you're going to get your size, what is this, size 8 millimeter. I think we're using an 8 millimeter if I'm not mistaken. Yep. It's going to go into the bottom of your reg, where you're just going to crack it open a little bit and then unscrew it by hand. Now be very careful when you take this off, okay? When you take this off, it's going to have your little air filter here. There are rumors that if you put this in wrong, the cycle is not going to be strong enough, or it's not going to work properly. I don't know. I hear different things from everyone, but what I did here, you can see, I marked the face that goes upwards black. I put a little Sharpie mark on it, just so that way when I put it back together again, I know which way this little filter should be facing, but both sides are the exact same. So a little trick right there is to mark it. So again, when you put it back, it's going to be facing up the right way, and then you don't have to worry about whether you put it in or not, and you're not going to have second thoughts before you go to bed at night whether your gun is going to work because you put this filter in wrong. I personally don't think it makes a difference, because both sides look the exact same, but just pay attention to that, just in case, okay? So now what we're going to do is take the smallest Allen key that we can possibly find, which I believe is 1.5 millimeters. I think it's about 1.5. And we have these two baby screws on the sides of the regulator. We're going to be taking out both those screws. Try to do this slowly, gentle. They're very, very small. It's easy to cross thread the screws. It's easy to break the screws and to strip them. So don't lose those. Put those aside. Let's do the other one. Good. Okay. Now we're going to get our fattest Allen key again. Put that at the top. And we are going to get our 8 millimeter out here. Where is it? Put that at the bottom and crank it open. So if you want to face it this way, you're going to unscrew, so counterclockwise. Both sides are going counterclockwise to unscrew it. Be very careful when unscrewing. Maybe hold it upside down, because you're going to have that, piston spring come out. Okay, so we got that off. Let's start off with the bottom piece here. So, don't know if you can see this. If I get my little handy dandy flashlight, you can see a little white O-ring in there. Again, that is an O-ring that a lot of people miss, and it's really difficult to get to. So we're going to pay attention to that O-ring. And then you have this O-ring outside here at the bottom of the threads. And then the fat black O-ring, the biggest one at the top. And then here, this is our top half. You just have, the O-ring on the outside, O-ring at the top. Nothing really on the inside besides the threads. you're going to have that little spring come out of you. And then I'm just going to take the back of this and just kind of pop this piece out. And then you have this O-ring to deal with. And that's pretty much it. That is as far as you need to go as a user for the regulator. So we're just going to quickly wipe off the excess grease on all this stuff. Remove it from the threads. We're going to clean that inside O-ring at the bottom piece that we were talking about. Good. Okay. Get your grease, smear it on there, and roll. Okay, you can put your spring back on. You're going to put that going upwards like this. Actually, if you want to put that in after, you can push that right up. Pop the little spring back in, and that's good to go. As of this side, again, just roll it on that O-ring there, on the fat outside O-ring. Now after doing this, remember those two little screws that we took out to get to this point? They screw into these little baby gaps right here. So you might have your grease in there, you might have some dirt and debris in there. Just get a dental pick or something really small and clean that out. Try not to scratch it too much. Because usually when you're putting grease on the O-rings, the grease gets in there. So we did that. And now we can screw the two back together. Actually, no, again, almost forgot. You have a little O-ring, baby O-ring inside there. Now you're just going to get some grease. You can put some grease on the tip of the Q-tip and just kind of roll it on the inside. Take care of that O-ring as much as possible. Keep an eye on it. You don't have to maintain it 24/7, but you really do want to keep an eye on it because it's going to be a pain in the butt to replace. It is in such a weird location. Okay, so now we can screw our regulator back together. Go by hand first as much as you can. You're going to get your fat Allen key, put that at the top again, your 8mm. And I need you to then screw it all the way in. Oh no, we forgot a piece. Our spring came out. You always double check, right? Put your spring in there. Make sure that doesn't fall out. Like I said, we're going to screw this back in now. Screw it all the way in and then back it out, because you have two holes for those baby screws and you want those holes to line up. So once you think you have them lined up perfectly, I actually have a flashlight so I can see in the holes. Yep, make sure they're lined up perfectly. And once they are, hold it very carefully. Get your 1.5mm Allen key. Start off with one of the screws and screw that baby in. If you find that it's tightening too early, you're most likely starting to cross thread it. So make sure that you screw it, it's able to screw in all the way with ease, and then don't torque it down just yet. Try to get both screws in there before you tighten it. Okay, And then you can tighten them down just a little tiny bit. You don't even really need to, but okay. And then you have the two outside O-rings here. Grease on the threads, and that's it. So what we're gonna actually do right now is just put this aside, because I'm gonna show you now how to take apart the grip frame if you need to clean inside. Because if you were playing woods ball, or if your field was full of mud, or it rained or something, and you need to get in between your grip frame and the body, I'm just going to show you how to properly and carefully take that out. So first thing that we want to do is unscrew the grips. Okay, grip comes off. If you want to wash this, again, I just run it under hot water. You can get in between the creases and everything very, very easily. Put that aside. Get the Allen key that fits, and you got one screw in here between the trigger and the regulator that you're going to take out, and then you got the screw where the engine goes. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is take this screw off here. Okay, so that's one. And here's two. Now I guess what I recommend you do first is unplug your board, of course, and unplug your eye wire. Be extremely careful. This thing is like paper, so you can break it easily. Pull it out as best as you can, and then when you take it off, gently, carefully take it off. Don't rush. You don't want to pinch these wires or get them stuck somewhere where you might accidentally slice them apart. And then you have the gun in two, okay? So what you want to do, you got your lower half. If you want to just quickly clean it, you get paint in between there, you want to clean that out. Top half. Okay, so I got my feather touches in place, manifold, everything's in place. Okay, you got your channel here for the eye wire. Make sure that your eyes are all in the right place. Okay, they're wedged in nicely. And they're clean. So it looks like everything here is already clean. I see this little O-ring here that you might just want to put some grease on the face of it, just in case. If your gun starts to randomly leak from the grip, you can always check that O-ring, because that's always a possibility right there. And then when you put these two back together, always make sure you keep your eye wire to the right, of course, and your board wire, you're going to want to put that in first and carefully start to guide that in. Okay. Keep an eye on your eye wire, make sure it's in its channel still. And with this wire, I can't emphasize this enough. If this wire is at the bottom here and you're rushing putting this thing on, look what's going to happen. You're going to pinch it with the metal grip and you're going to actually slice it off. So you want to make sure you keep that wire to the side, like just like that when you're putting it in there. Now it's fully in, the wire is not pinched, it's off to the side. And make sure your eye wire sits in the channel that's supposed to be in. Good. So now you're going to hold your gun down. I'm going to quickly put this screw in, just so I don't got to hold the two in place. Okay. Plug back in your board. Then we want to connect our eye wire. Now very carefully slide that in there. Don't yank on it too hard. You don't want to rip it. And that's in there nicely. Before you put all the screws back in, just turn your gun on and make sure it works. Good. Pull the trigger. Breech is clear, so it's not firing. There you go. Got my Millennium 10 balls a second. Okay, good. So my solenoid works. Everything works. Perfect. Now we can go ahead and put our screws back in there. Hand tighten. Don't strip the screws. Don't cross thread the screws. Not a whole lot of torque needed to tighten down the screws. Good. Now this would be a good time right after you put maybe your regulator back on. Don't put on the grips just yet, but if you wanted to charge your gun, I highly recommend that you do that. My battery is at about 3 out of 5 bars on my OLED, so I think I'm okay for one more day of paintball. But after that, of course, I'm going to have to charge it. I try not to charge my gun too often. Like if I got full bars or maybe 1 bar off, I'm not going to plug it in and unplug it. So if you don't have the OLED, maybe your gun is at 75%, 100%, you're perfectly fine. I say once it goes down to at least 50% is a good time when you want to just plug it in. 25% you definitely want to plug it in. But again, just try not to, charge it so often. Just try to conserve the life on everything on your gun. And when you're putting these grip screws back on, make sure that you don't even need to hand tighten it. You're going to just screw it in, and then once you find a little bit of resistance, you're just going to put a tiny little bit of torque into it, but not a whole lot, because you don't want to rip the rubber grips. Over time, when you're screwing these on and off, you're going to find that the rubber starts to wear out, and if you tighten it too far in, you're just going to wear out the rubber even more, and then your grips are just going to fall off. Like the screws will be screwed into the gun, but they're going to go right through the rubber, and then you're going to need new grips. So try to avoid that. Just tighten it down a little bit. It doesn't need to be tightened down that much. Good, so that's on. Now with the regulator, I only kept this off because it's easier to get to that screw, so I recommend doing it in that order. Maybe do your reg first, and then take out the body, and then put the body back together, and then put the reg back on. So when you're putting this back on, again, make sure that the filter's going the right way. I don't know if it makes a difference or not. I don't know if you care if it does. I do, just because I like my gun to be in the best performance, and I'm going to be a little bit anal about stuff like this. So I'm putting that right side up, screwing it into the gun. Good, make sure the filter sits in there properly. There you go. Tighten it down just a tiny bit. You can use your 8mm for this. I think it's 8 or 9. Might be 9mm actually. You check, experiment. If it's 8 or 9, you tell me. And you can put your grip back on. Put your bumper O-ring in there. Do not forget that bumper O-ring. And then you can put your cap, your nut back in there. Use your fat size Allen key to screw that in. Don't over tighten again. Tiny bit of torque just to tighten down the grip. That's it. My core is still clean, no dirt on it, lubricated. My channel in there is nice and clean. When you're putting this back in, for some reason, especially when your gun is new or freshly lubricated, your O-rings might get pinched when putting it back in there. So see, just like that, it's pushing up on the O-ring. You don't want to just ram this thing in there because you are going to rip your O-ring, right? So with your finger, just kind of guide each one in. Then once you get to this point here, you want to lift this latch, because if you can see that, there's a little pin there underneath it. And with that pin, if you're just going to ram your bolt all the way into the gun, it's going to ding up at the back of it here, and then where you're going to get what I heard is called an idiot mark, which is a nice fat, ugly silver scratch. Same thing with the top of it here. When you put this thing all the way in, then you just drop the latch and then ram it in there, you're probably going to scratch up the inside here as well. So put your bolt in there, guide the O-rings in nicely. You don't need to rush. Lift up your latch and close it down, and then you're good to go. Okay. Clean any of the excess grease off the outside of your marker. You're good to go. Your Lux is about finished. That's about as far of a maintenance as you need to go for your Lux. You know, don't unscrew things or take anything apart that you don't know how to put back together, or you don't know even just the functionality of it, because I promise if you do it wrong, you're going to ruin your gun very easily. I'm going to put a little bit of grease at the tip of my reg as well on my tank and just around the threads. Just makes screwing and unscrewing the bottle into your gun much easier, but don't dry fire your gun too often. Don't go crazy with it, but I'm just going to do it right now so I can kind of warm up the freshly lubricated bolt on the inside. So screw your ASA all the way in and then back it up about a quarter of a turn. That way you have a nice airflow going from your regulator into your gun. Turning my gun on, you know that eyes work, eyes are off, no leaks, nope, we're perfectly fine. Gun is in perfect working condition. Turn that off. The gas from the top, and screw your bottle, and that is it. So I hope that you are enjoying your Lux, because these are extremely amazing markers. Yes, they are very customizable. With the programming and everything inside the board, you can change a whole lot of your settings. With the feather touch screw, things like that, you can really make the gun shoot 100,000 different ways. But if you're getting your gun brand new and you spend a huge chunk of money on a paintball marker, I suggest keeping the settings just the way it is out of the factory and let your gun break in, just like I did. I got this gun nearly brand new, and I haven't touched any of the settings. Maintenance wise, go as far of a maintenance as I just showed you. Try not to take apart anything that you're not familiar with, and don't do it randomly whenever you feel like it. Don't do it at home. Don't do it at the end of every single practice, before and after. You can do it like once a month. You can, maybe if your breech is full of paint and dirt, or you're breaking paint, you can take apart your bolt and you can clean it and re-lubricate it and stuff like that. But as far as the reg goes and the ASA, and taking apart the grip frame and everything like that, you don't need to do that very often. So stick to the basics. If you need any help, you can rewatch this video, go through everything that I showed you, and I hope it helped. Alright, see you in the next video, guys.